The diner lights flickered the way they always did near closing, buzzing softly above cracked tiles and grease-stained counters. The smell of old coffee clung to the air, mixed with fried onions and something burnt that no amount of cleaning ever seemed to remove. She moved slowly now, feet aching, shoulders tight, wiping the same section of counter again even though it was already clean. Habit was easier than stopping. Stopping meant thinking. Tips sat lonely in the jar. A few crumpled bills. Some coins. Not enough to make the day feel like it had been worth it, but enough to remind her she had survived another one. She untied her apron and hung it on the hook by the back door. Outside, the night had already settled in, heavy and cold. The streetlight behind the diner cast a pale yellow glow onto the cracked pavement and the alley beyond. That was when she saw movement. 2 small figures sat near the dumpster, half hidden by shadows. A boy and a girl. Too still. Too quiet. She paused, keys in her hand, heart tightening in a way she couldn't explain. "Hey!" she called softly. "You can't be back here!" They didn't respond. The boy's shoulders were hunched, arms wrapped around his knees. The girl leaned against him, her head resting on his arm like she'd done it 1,000 times before. She sighed, tiredness weighing down every thought. People were always hanging around the alley. Teenagers. Drunks. But these weren't that. These were children. She turned back inside, locking the door behind her, but the image followed her, the way the girl's jacket sleeves were too long, the way the boy's shoes looked borrowed, not owned. She stared at the warming trays. Most were empty now, but there was still food that would end up in the trash. She hesitated. Rules were rules. The manager had made that clear more than once. No leftovers taken outside. No handouts. Liability, he said. Always liability. But hunger didn't care about liability. She filled 2 plates, modest but warm, wrapping them in napkins like she'd done it her whole life. When she stepped back outside, the cold bit through her thin sweater. She placed the plates on an overturned crate a few feet away and stepped back. "Eat slow," she said gently. "It's hot." The boy looked up first. His eyes were sharp, cautious. Protective. The girl's eyes followed, wide and hollow, fixed on the food like it might disappear as she blinked. "Thank you," the girl whispered, barely audible. The boy nodded once and pulled the plate closer, breaking the bread in half and handing a piece to her before taking any for himself. Something twisted in her chest. She didn't ask questions. Didn't want answers that would stay with her longer than she could carry. She simply stood there, pretending to search her bag while they ate. When they finished, she collected the plates and nodded toward the street. "Go on now. It's cold." They didn't move right away. The girl looked up at her. "You work here?" She smiled faintly. "Most days." That was all. The next night, they were there again. She told herself it was coincidence. That kids drifted. That she just happened to notice them twice. But when closing time came, her eyes went straight to the alley before her keys ever touched the lock. They were waiting. She felt something warm rise in her chest, relief, maybe, and hated herself for it. She went back inside without a word and brought out food again. This time, the boy spoke. "Why you do this?" She shrugged. "Because I can." That seemed to satisfy him. Days passed. Then weeks. The alley became routine. Sometimes she brought soup in plastic cups. Sometimes just bread and fruit she'd saved from her own groceries. Some nights she ate nothing at all, telling herself she wasn't hungry. The manager noticed. "You're throwing out a lot less," he said one night, arms crossed. "What's going on?" She kept her eyes down. "Trying not to waste." He snorted. "Waste is cheaper than lawsuits." The way he said it made her stomach drop. She started watching the front of the diner too. A man in a sedan sometimes sat across the street, engine running, eyes lingering too long on the alley. Once, she caught a woman slowing her walk, staring openly, lips pressed tight. The boy noticed too. "People watching," he muttered one night. She stiffened. "Then you should leave." The girl shook her head quickly. Please! Rain started coming more often. Cold rain that soaked through clothes and bones alike. One night, the girl was shivering so badly she could barely hold her cup. Come here, she said without thinking. She took off her own sweater and wrapped it around the girl's shoulders. The fabric swallowed her small frame. That night she didn't sleep. A few days later, the coughing started. It was quiet at first, just a dry rasp, but it grew worse. The girl's lips trembled, breath hitching like each inhale was work. That was when she made the decision that changed everything. Come with me, she said. The boy froze. Where? My place. Just for the night. He looked around, calculating risks far beyond his years. Finally, he nodded. Her apartment smelled faintly of detergent and old books. She gave them the couch and the only blanket she owned. She slept on the floor, staring at the ceiling, listening to the girl breathe. In the morning, she braided hair she'd never braided before and found clothes that didn't quite fit but were clean. She walked them to a free clinic, heart pounding the entire time. People stared. Some smiled politely. Some didn't. At church that Sunday, a woman leaned toward another and whispered, eyes flicking toward her. She felt it like a slap. The knock came a week later. 2 officials stood at her door. Calm. Professional. Unyielding. We received a report, one said. About children staying here. The boy stepped in front of her. She didn't do nothing. Her voice shook as she spoke. They just needed food. Warmth. They exchanged looks. Do you have legal guardianship? She swallowed. No. That was enough. When they were taken, the girl screamed her name like it was the only thing she had left. The sound followed her long after the car disappeared down the street. She stood in the doorway until the cold forced her inside. That night, the diner lights flickered again. The alley was empty. And somewhere deep inside she knew her kindness had just become a story that wasn't finished yet. The silence after they were taken was louder than any scream she had ever heard. The apartment felt wrong without them, too clean, too empty, too still. The couch looked bigger than it had before, the blanket folded neatly on top like it was mocking her. She sat on the floor where she had slept that last night, back against the wall, staring at nothing until the sun came up. She still went to work. Grief didn't excuse absence, and rent didn't care about heartbreak. She tied her apron, forced a smile, and poured coffee for people who complained about the temperature like it was the worst thing that had ever happened to them. But she was different now. Distracted. Slower. Her eyes kept drifting to the clock near closing time, to the back door, to the alley that had become empty. You okay? A coworker asked once. She nodded. Just tired. The rumors came before the consequences. She was hiding kids, someone said loudly near the register one afternoon, not even pretending to whisper. Probably trying to get sympathy, another replied. A customer left no tip and shook her head as she walked out. Some people don't know their place, she muttered. The manager finally called her into the office. He didn't raise his voice. That somehow made it worse. I warned you, he said. Now there's talk. Police questions. Inspectors might show up. I didn't hurt anyone, she said, hands clenched in her lap. That's not the point. He slid her final check across the desk. I can't have trouble. She stared at the paper. You're firing me. He shrugged. Call it letting go. She packed her things in silence. Apron last. The bell over the door rang as she stepped outside, and for the first time in years she didn't know where she was supposed to go next. Days blurred together. Job applications. Closed doors. Polite smiles that didn't reach anyone's eyes. Some places never called back. Others called just long enough to say they'd found someone else. Money ran thin fast. She sold what little she could, an old radio, a lamp, books she loved but needed less than groceries. Some nights, she skipped dinner without realizing it, stomach aching only after it was too late. And always, the questions followed her. Where are they sleeping now? Are they warm? Is the girl still coughing? Does the boy still stand in front of her when he's scared? She went to the building where the officials had taken them from. Asked at offices. Made calls she barely understood how to make. Every answer sounded the same. Confidential. In foster care. We can't share that information. Once, she was told gently. You should move on. Move on. As if love were a misplaced object. One night, rain hammered the windows so hard it sounded like fists. She dreamed of the alley, of 2 plates cooling on a crate while no one came to eat them. She woke up crying, hands shaking, breath short. The church stopped calling. Neighbors grew colder. Some avoided her altogether. Others stared openly, judgment hanging heavy in the air. The woman who lived downstairs once blocked the stairwell, arms crossed. You bring trouble, she said flatly. People talk. She stepped around her without responding. Weeks turned into months. Months into years. She found work again eventually, cleaning offices at night, wiping down desks that belonged to people who never noticed her. The pay was less, the hours longer, but it was something. She learned to live smaller. Quieter. On the anniversary of the night they were taken, she lit a candle and set it by the window. She didn't pray for miracles. Just safety. Just survival. Time did what it always does. It dulled some edges, sharpened others. Her hair showed gray. Lines settled around her eyes. She learned which streets to avoid at night, which buses ran late, which stores discounted food just before closing. Sometimes, she thought she saw them. A boy on a corner, tall now, posture familiar. A girl laughing on a bus, her hair braided the same way. Each time, her heart leapt and fell just as fast. She never stopped looking. One afternoon, nearly a decade later, a letter arrived with no return address. Her name was written carefully, deliberately. Inside was a single sentence. Do you still live on Oak Street? Her hands trembled. She read it again. And again. She wrote back that night, keeping it simple. Yes. Always yes. No response came. Another year passed. She told herself not to hope. Hope had teeth. Hope hurt. But some nights she caught herself imagining, older now, grown, safe. Maybe together. Maybe apart. Maybe remembering her the way she remembered them. Then came the phone call. A number she didn't recognize. She almost ignored it. Hello? She said finally. There was a pause. Breathing. Controlled. Familiar in a way she couldn't place. Please don't hang up, a voice said. Her heart slammed against her ribs. I just wanted to make sure. The voice continued carefully. That you were still there. Her throat closed. Who is this? Another pause. Longer this time. Someone who owes you everything. The line went dead. That night, she sat on her porch until the sky went dark, staring down the street like she was waiting for something to appear. She didn't know what. Only that the past, the part she had buried just to survive, was standing up again. And whatever was coming was closer than she thought. After the phone call, sleep stopped coming easily. Nights stretched longer than they should have, every sound outside her window suddenly meaningful. A car slowing down made her sit up. Footsteps on the sidewalk pulled her to the curtain. Nothing ever appeared, but the feeling didn't leave. It settled into her bones, quiet and persistent, like a question waiting for an answer. She replayed the voice again and again in her head. Older. Steadier. But beneath it, something familiar stirred, like recognizing a song you hadn't heard since childhood. Someone who owes you everything. The words echoed until they lost shape, then returned sharper than before. She tried to call the number back. It didn't connect. Life continued anyway. It always did. She cleaned offices, nodded at strangers, bought groceries with careful calculation. But something had shifted. She found herself standing straighter, looking people in the eye longer than before. As if some invisible weight had been lifted, or perhaps transferred somewhere else. 2 weeks later, a black sedan appeared on her street. It didn't park in front of her house. It stopped a few doors down. Engine off. Windows dark. It sat there for nearly an hour. She watched from behind the curtain, heart pounding, telling herself she was being foolish. But when she stepped outside to take out the trash, the car rolled forward slowly and disappeared around the corner. The next day, a woman knocked on her door. She was well dressed, professional, clipboard tucked under her arm. Her smile was polite but careful. "I'm looking for you," she said. "I hope I have the right address." Her stomach tightened. "You found it." The woman glanced down at her clipboard. "I'm here to verify residency." "Nothing to worry about." "Verify for what?" The woman hesitated, then smiled again. "That information isn't mine to share." She answered the questions anyway. How long she'd lived there. Whether she owned or rented. Whether she lived alone. The woman thanked her and left without another word. That night she sat at her small kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of tea gone cold. Something was happening. She could feel it. Not danger exactly, but movement. Pieces sliding into place. Memories came uninvited. The boy's wary eyes. The girl's quiet thank you. The way they had clung to each other like the world might fall apart if they let go. She wondered what had shaped them after they left her. What kindnesses they had received. What cruelties. Another letter arrived 3 days later. Thicker this time. No return address again. Inside were photocopies. Old documents. A grainy photo of 2 children sitting on a crate behind a diner, plates in their hands. Her heart nearly stopped. She sank into the chair, fingers trembling as she turned the page. There were records. Foster placements. Transfers. Scholarships. Awards. Headlines she'd never seen. One sentence was circled in ink. Early academic assessments indicated exceptional aptitude. She pressed a hand to her mouth. Exceptional. Brilliant. Alive. Tears blurred the words. At the bottom of the last page was a note written in careful handwriting. Tomorrow. Please be home. She didn't sleep at all. Morning came slow and gray. She cleaned her house like it was about to be inspected by the world. Straightened picture frames. Washed dishes that were already clean. She changed her clothes twice, finally settling on something simple and neat. By noon, her nerves were frayed. A sound cut through the air that didn't belong on her street. A low thump. Then another. The windows rattled. Birds scattered from rooftops. She stepped outside just as neighbors began spilling onto their porches, confusion and excitement buzzing like electricity. Phones came out. Voices rose. The sound grew louder. A helicopter appeared over the rooftops, black and sleek, moving with purpose. It circled once, slow and deliberate, then descended toward the empty lot across the street. Wind whipped her hair around her face. Dust rose. Grass flattened beneath the force of it. Her knees felt weak. The helicopter touched down with a final heavy thud. The blades slowed but did not stop. A door opened. 2 men in dark suits stepped out first, scanning the area. One spoke into an earpiece. The other nodded. Then they stepped aside. A woman emerged next. She moved with confidence, her posture unmistakable. Her hair was pulled back neatly, her expression calm but focused. She took in the street, the houses, the people watching, and then her eyes landed on her. The world narrowed. The woman started walking toward her. Every step felt like thunder. Behind her, another figure appeared at the helicopter door. Taller. Broader. Dressed simply, but carrying himself like someone who had never had to ask permission to exist. He followed. Neighbors whispered. Someone gasped. A child waved excitedly. She couldn't move. They stopped a few feet away. Close enough that she could see it now, the resemblance. The eyes. The shape of a smile waiting just beneath the surface. The man spoke first. "You still live here?" he said softly. Her voice came out broken. "I never left." He swallowed hard. The woman stepped forward, her eyes shining. We weren't sure you'd want to see us. She laughed then, a sound caught between sob and disbelief. I looked for you every day. The woman reached out, fingers brushing her arm like she was afraid she might disappear. You fed us when no one else did. The man nodded. You kept us alive long enough to be noticed. They told her pieces at first. Enough to keep her standing. The scholarships. The mentors. The people who had seen potential where the world had seen burden. They spoke of long nights studying, of working twice as hard, of carrying a memory that refused to fade. You were our constant, the woman said. Even when we didn't know where you were. The man glanced back at the helicopter. We wanted to come quietly. But time ran out. Time for what? She asked. For you to know, he replied. Before decisions are made. A suited man approached, holding a folder. The woman took it but didn't open it yet. This isn't about money, the woman said quickly, as if reading her thoughts. It's about truth. The folder was heavy in her hands. Inside were documents she barely understood. Property deeds. Accounts. Names she recognized only now. At the top was a simple sentence. In recognition of unwavering compassion. Her chest tightened. I didn't do it for any of this, she whispered. The man smiled gently. We know. The helicopter blades slowed further, the roar fading into a hum. The street held its breath. She looked at them, no longer children, not quite strangers, and understood something she hadn't allowed herself to believe before. Kindness didn't disappear. It waited. And now, it had found its way home. The folder felt heavier than it should have, as if it carried not just paper but years, nights, choices, sacrifices she had made without witnesses. She held it against her chest while the wind from the helicopter brushed past, lifting dust and memories together. Around them, the street had gone quiet in a way that felt reverent, like everyone somehow knew this moment wasn't meant to be interrupted. I don't understand, she said finally, her voice small against the open sky. Why all this? Why now? The woman glanced at the man beside her, then back at her. Because there's a point where gratitude turns into responsibility, she said. And we crossed it. They stepped away from the helicopter, moving toward the porch like they had done it before, like this house had always been part of their map. She noticed how the man slowed his steps to match hers, how his eyes kept flicking toward her face as if making sure she was real. They sat together on the worn wooden steps. The helicopter engines powered down, leaving a ringing silence behind. Neighbors lingered at a distance, curiosity battling respect. We grew up knowing one thing, the man said quietly. That someone chose us when it cost her something. She shook her head. It didn't cost. It did, he interrupted gently. It cost you your job. Your reputation. Years of peace. She looked down at her hands, scarred and familiar. I would do it again. The woman smiled, eyes shining. That's why we're here. They told her more then. About boardrooms and hospitals. About satellites and scholarships. About decisions that affected thousands of lives. They spoke carefully, never bragging, never elevating themselves above her. Every achievement was framed not as triumph, but as continuation. You taught us something no school could, the woman said. That dignity isn't given by status. It's proven by action. The man opened the folder and turned it toward her. He explained slowly, patiently, as if afraid to overwhelm her. The house. The accounts. A lifetime of security she had never imagined for herself. She pushed the folder back toward them. I don't want charity. The man didn't flinch. This isn't charity. This is correction. She frowned. An imbalance, he continued. You gave when you had nothing extra. The world took from you and never paid it back. We're fixing that. Tears slipped down her cheeks despite her efforts. I didn't expect anything. We know, the woman said softly. That's the point. They stood together as the sun dipped lower, shadows stretching across the street. One of the suited men approached again, this time carrying a small box. He handed it to the woman, who passed it to her. Inside was a blanket. Old. Carefully preserved. Faded at the edges. Her breath caught. I remember this. You gave it to us, the woman said. On the coldest night. She pressed the fabric to her face, breathing in the scent of something familiar, something safe. I thought you forgot me, she whispered. The man shook his head. We built everything with you in mind. They stayed until dusk. The helicopter lifted again, this time without urgency, leaving behind only flattened grass and changed lives. When it was gone, the streets slowly returned to motion. Neighbors waved. Some smiled. Others stared stunned. That night, she sat alone at her kitchen table, the folder open in front of her, the blanket folded beside it. The house felt different now, not bigger, not newer, but lighter. Days turned into weeks. The changes came quietly at first. Paperwork. Meetings she never thought she'd attend. People spoke to her with a respect that still startled her. She moved into a house that didn't creak when the wind blew, but she kept her old place for a while, unable to let go too fast. She didn't stop working. She volunteered at shelters, kitchens, clinics. She watched faces light up when warm food appeared, when kindness arrived without questions. Sometimes, the man would visit, sitting at the table like he belonged there. Sometimes, the woman joined her, helping braid a child's hair at the shelter, smiling the same gentle smile she had worn that first day. One evening, as they closed the doors together, she asked quietly, Do you ever think about that alley? All the time, the woman replied. The man nodded. That's where our lives began. She looked at them then, no longer children, no longer strangers, and felt something settle inside her at last. Not pride. Not relief. Peace. Months later, she stood in the empty lot where the helicopter had landed, now cleared and quiet. Grass had grown back. The air smelled clean. She wrapped the old blanket around her shoulders and smiled to herself. Some kindness doesn't fade. It waits. And when it returns, it doesn't come to impress, it comes to remind the world that the smallest acts can echo the longest. She turned toward home, heart full, knowing that love given freely never truly leaves. It simply finds its way back, louder than doubt, stronger than time.